Hi, welcome to this session on the UPSC CSE interview, where we are talking about how to ace the UPSC CSE interview, or the personality test as it is officially called. Before we begin, I'll share my experience. I gave this interview in my previous attempt, that is a 2022 attempt, and I scored 198 marks, which is considered a good marks. During that entire preparation phase of those 3-4 months, whatever insights I've gained, whatever I felt was useful and maybe not so useful, my goal today here is to present all of that concisely to you so that you don't waste your time in unnecessary avenues, but rather you end up making the most efficient use of your time. And at the same time, my goal is to help you figure out how to maximize your scores and take it to the level that you want to take it to. So that will be the goal of this session. And we've divided this session into 2 parts. In the first part, we'll talk more about the core ideas that should inform our UPSC CSE preparation. And in the second part, we'll talk more about particular strategies, the different kinds of questions that they ask, how to prepare for those questions, the role of the various resources that we are provided with, how to best make use of those resources, so on and so forth. And we'll see in between how the core ideas or the core philosophy of this preparation, of this approach towards the interview stage should inform our particular strategies as well. And this will be the entire session. I hope you learn a lot. I hope you have a good time, and I hope it provides useful to you and helps you in boosting your scores. So we'll now move on to the first slide. Now, the first thing when we begin this preparation for the interview stage or the personality test is we need to know what parameters we'll be evaluated on, or what are the characteristics or the qualities that they'll look in us. What qualities are they looking for? Now, in a way, we are lucky because UPSC itself in its notification has mentioned a list of certain qualities that they're looking for. Now, the first insight that I want to share with you people here is, if you go through this entire list, be it mental caliber, intellectual qualities, mental alertness, critical powers of assimilation, so on and so forth, right down to intelligent interest. A lot of these qualities mentioned are related to your mental caliber, as this one says. And except for, let's say, ability for social cohesion, leadership, and moral integrity, all the other qualities mentioned are related to your mental caliber. Now, why am I pointing this out? Because when we hear the word a personality test, our first instinct is to believe that we'll be judged on the basis of our entire personality. But they're not looking for all those traits, and there is good reason why. This entire process is a sort of a directed conversation. It's a purposeful conversation. And through a conversation, you can figure out how someone thinks, how well-read they are, how sharp their thinking is, how they're able to present what they know, how good their understanding is. Okay. But at the same time, it is very difficult to figure out how ethical someone is, how much empathy they have, because these are traits that can be faked in a conversation. So UPSC will check these traits only, your mental caliber, your intellectual qualities, your mental alertness, because these are the traits that will or that can be gauged through a conversation. And so this is the first insight that you have to remember, that even though we call it a personality test, at the end of the day, it is testing a very small subset of your personality. And that is mostly related to your mental caliber. Now, how will this thing transform or change our approach? Again, we'll look at that in a later stage. But for now, just keep in mind this basic idea. Now, these are the qualities that have been mentioned directly in the UPSC notification or whatever forms that we have, the details that they provide. But in addition to this, these are not the only things they're looking for. They're also looking for a lot of qualities or traits that have not been mentioned directly. And again, that will change our approach towards this process. So the whole idea of this thing is that the panel members sitting there who are going to take our personality test or going to take our interview, almost all of them are either senior officers in the service or they're retired officers from the service. So they've spent a lot of their career within the system. They know how the system works, how it functions. They know what sort of people end up becoming good or great civil servants. And they know the qualities that are the best fit for working well within the system. Now, I need you to understand one thing. Here, I'm not necessarily saying that they know who is a good person or a bad person. It's more about a fit. Like, there are certain qualities which may be great qualities in a different setting, in a different context, but they may not be so useful within civil services, within the system, because you have to function within the confines of the system. And the people who are going to take our interview, who are going to have that conversation with us, they've worked decades within the system and they know the kind of people who will succeed or who will thrive in that environment. And so they're looking for candidates with similar, let's say, abilities, traits, personality characteristics, so on and so forth. Again, if you have to sum up it in one sentence, it is what or who would become an ideal administrator. One misconception we have, and this is because we write a lot of examples in GS4, we write examples like Ashok Khemka sir or Armstrong Palmer sir. Okay, they may be great examples for ethics perspective or from GS4 perspective, but that does not necessarily mean that they are the sort of people that panelists are looking for. Okay, the template in front of the panelists or the board members is not the people we see in the newspapers. Their template is the people working behind the scenes, the people who go on to be cabinet secretaries or chief secretaries in the IAS, or let's say senior ambassadors in the IFS. And when we are approaching this entire process, our thinking should be, will I become an ideal cabinet secretary or a chief secretary? Do I have the traits to be such a person? So how will you use this in your preparation? Whenever you're giving mock interviews, you'll get recordings of your mocks. So when you are watching those mocks, make sure that you, somewhere in the back of your head, you have this thing that you're analyzing whether you'll be a good fit for the system, whether you'll be a good administrator, whether the person you're seeing on screen is someone who will become a good chief secretary or a cabinet secretary or an ambassador. Okay? And judge yourself or evaluate yourself based on that. And a few qualities. For instance, I personally believe that being in a system means you have to respect the hierarchies there. You have to respect your subordinates also. So being respectful, being a good listener, being humble, these are all qualities that will fetch you a lot more marks at the interview stage. And you need to exhibit these qualities as well. And also, a good thing is that these are the qualities that can be gauged in a conversation. Many of you who have not given the UPSC interview yet, you would have seen transcripts posted by the candidates right after the interview. There are Telegram channels which share these transcripts. The thing is, in those transcripts, they give just, let's say, one question or one line. But in the actual interview, the questions are usually 3, 4, 5 lines long. Maybe they say an entire para. And so, as candidates, we are supposed to understand the gist of that question and answer accordingly. That's also another way they check how good a listener we are. Similarly, they may check how well we respond to criticism. They may check how well, let's say someone corrects us, how do we accept that correction? If we know something is wrong and a senior member is saying that, do we fight with them? Do we know how to respectfully disagree with them? Do we know how to yield to their authority? Again, in a different setting, this kind of a quality may not be desirable, but within the system, these are the qualities that enable you to function or thrive the best. And so these are the qualities or traits that they're going to judge you for. And again, like the core question you have to remember is the qualities that I'm showing. Will it be enough to be an ideal administrator or an ideal diplomat? Okay. So this entire part that we covered, the fact that they're checking our mental caliber. And second, the fact that they're looking for certain traits which will help us to thrive within the system. Okay, these are the core two insights that I want to share with you today. And after this, like we'll look at how having this changes our approach or how we can use this to prepare what we have to prepare. Now, when we come to the core preparation for the interview stage, the first thing we do after we get the results is we fill the DAF whenever it is out. And this is a stage which is quite confusing for a lot of us, especially for those who are filling for the first time. We are worried about what hobbies to fill. We are worried about service preferences, cadre preferences, so on and so forth. The good thing is that within the UPSC CSE community, the community is very strong. So you'll be part of a lot of Telegram groups where people will guide you, especially when it comes to services and cadre preferences. You'll notice a lot of officers who are already in these services. They'll give you the ground reality and they'll give you adequate reasons to choose to select what services you want or which cadre is preferable, what are the reasons. And so in those areas, you'll get a lot of help when you're filling the form. So you don't need to worry about that right now. What you need to focus on is what hobbies you will fill, because out of your entire DAF, your graduation history is fixed, your home states are fixed, your addresses are fixed. The one thing in your control is what hobbies or what interests you'll fill. Now, again, the golden rule. Remember, they're checking the mental caliber. They're not checking how great a person you are. They're not checking many other traits that we usually associate with when we think of personality. So you don't have to necessarily show that you have these incredible hobbies. Okay, what you have to show is this a good fit for the system? And second, is this a hobby or interest on which I can have an interesting conversation with? That's the core idea. The whole purpose of why we are filling hobbies in the DAF is so that the notification itself talks that it is not a random conversation, it is a directed conversation. So the board needs certain topics on which to direct the conversation. And if you fill something which they can talk about, then obviously they're going to ask questions on that. That's going to be a strong area and you will end up doing well. So fill hobbies not just for the sake of appearing cool or appearing, whatever you want to do, but fill it so that they can be genuine conversation starters. And the thing is, don't fill something so unique that the board members don't know what they are. They won't ask a lot of questions from there if they do ask. Okay, try to fill stuff that they might also connect with and they would know at least some details about. Now, what hobbies to fill, how to fill, what to do. My advice for you at this stage would be to go for individual DAF sessions. A lot of coaching institutes conduct these things where there will be a mentor sitting there and you can approach them. They'll give you some half an hour of their time. You can talk to them and you can share your concerns and they will guide you in that entire process. So that I believe is a very helpful stage. I did that and there were a couple of institutes I went to. I received a lot of clarity after that. And so I would advise you to do the same or talk to seniors as well. My preference would be talking to mentors because they have seen more of the entire process and then talking to seniors as well. But core idea, fill to make conversations interesting or to start conversations, not necessarily to like show what sort of a person you are. And secondly, fill to ensure that you are a good fit within the system. Like I've heard some teachers say that certain hobbies might make you anti-bureaucratic in a way, like portray you as anti-bureaucratic. Again, I'm not very sure of what to do with that, but again, if you attend a couple of individual DAF sessions or how to fill your DAF, you will gain much more better insights there and use that to the best of your ability. Now, once you have filled your DAF, the next stage would be to start preparing for the CSE interview, which is the core idea. That's why we are here. And so there are a couple of different types of questions that they ask, and you prepare for all of them. First is questions related to your DAF. Second is questions related to current affairs. And third is questions related to situation-based questions. Okay. So these three kinds of questions are asked, and these are the three kinds of questions you have to prepare for. Now, again, the approach to these three will be different. A good thing to remember is that for DAF, you need to prepare in depth. But for current affairs and other areas, you need to have a surface level knowledge. Now, you might have heard this before, that the UPSC CSE interview is not a knowledge test, it is a personality test. At the same time, personally, my experience has been, and what I've seen in others is, you need to have adequate knowledge to back up your answers, and only then will you be rewarded. If you say generic stuff like everyone else, you will only get average marks. To score well, you need to have solid knowledge base. Now, that does not mean you study everything under the sun. A good metaphor to remember is to prepare stuff in a T-shaped manner. What do I mean by T-shaped manner? There are some core areas in which you have to go to a great depth. And those core areas are what are mentioned in your DAF. There you have to go very detailed. And these are your home state related stuff, your hobbies related stuff, your graduation, your optional, anything else mentioned in your DAF. Okay. These you have to prepare to a great depth, so that whatever question they ask from this area, you are able to answer it sufficiently well. The other areas, the current affairs related stuff, you need to have some awareness, you need to read newspapers, but you need just that surface level wala. So some areas, great depth, the other current affairs related stuff, surface areas, knowledge. That should be your approach. And so you end up devoting a lot of time to preparing your DAF. And the remaining time you have that surface level knowledge of current affairs, so that even if your interview is based on current affairs, you are able to do well. And now how do you prepare your DAF related portion? A lot of institutes release, let's say, home state related material. For every state, they'll release a particular PDF, okay, or hobbies related material. Personally, I did not find them very useful. What I found much more useful was using DAF questionnaires. And what you can do is you can send your DAF to certain institutes, and they'll give you a list of questions based on every entry in your DAF. And what your duty is, what your job should be, to prepare answers for each question in that DAF. Okay, so you're not just having a general understanding. Obviously, you need to read those documents or your Wikipedia pages for a general understanding, but also you're preparing specifically for particular questions. And the exact question would not be repeated, but the themes would be repeated, just like you did for prelims and mains. In a similar manner, the themes will be repeated, and you will have these ready-made answers. Now the thing, again, I talked about that insight first, that they're mainly testing your mental caliber. So here, in your home state related stuff or in your hobbies related topics, DAF related questions, you need to prepare things to a good detail. So as far as possible, try to use statistics, data, examples, initiatives, any particular fact that you can use to back up your answers, so that your answers don't appear generic in these areas. And what you do is you use your DAF questionnaire, you prepare answers to every question using your data and examples, use the internet indiscriminately in this phase. Personally, like for instance, when preparing home state related questions, okay, I use newspapers ke websites, Google, search for my state, went through any particular articles which contained relevant information. I even went through few research papers. For instance, ORF had this research paper on pollution in Delhi. So I went through, read through that, picked out some pointers from that, used it in my answer, so on and so forth. So you need to refer to a lot of resources. This is time consuming. Like for each answer, you might have to devote like, let's say half an hour, maybe 1 hour. But what that will ensure is you have a very high quality answer to those questions. Now, if these questions are being asked to you in your actual interview, what will happen is there will be across this entire process, let's say across 2,500 candidates, there may be 5-6 others who have been asked that same exact question. Now, if you have prepared this really high quality answers to these questions, you'll end up scoring much better, because you're showing that you are much better prepared. You're showing your mental caliber to a better degree than the others who may have given generic answers. So as far as possible, whatever is in your DAF, prepare high quality answers, use data, stats, use research papers, use newspaper articles. I've even referred to a lot of older editorials from the Hindu and the Indian Express because I Googled specifically for those topics. And I ended up repeating some facts and some initiatives I learned there in my actual UPSC interview as well. And that is one reason I feel I scored well. Again, here it is very useful to use ChatGPT, particularly when it comes to figuring out way forwards or let's say innovative solutions to certain issues. ChatGPT is very useful. And there are other questions also where we'll see. In situation-based questions also, ChatGPT is very useful, but it helps you to organize your answers. And if you're someone who's struggling with structuring your answers, let's say one feedback you get in your mocks is that your answers are not well structured. Again, ChatGPT helps you to structure your answers well. Now, 2 more things that I want to mention. One, follow the rule of 3. What it means is that basically just have 3 points for every question. 3 datas or 3 arguments for each opinion that you have, and you won't need anything more than that. So for every question that they asked, once you have given these 3 things, the panel will be satisfied. They'll move on. They may ask a related question. They may ask a different question, but just go through 3, just prepare 3 things. It also gives a sense of completion. Second, use online notes. Personally, I used Notion. You can use Evernote, OneNote, any other software. Why I would advocate online notes is again for 2 reasons. One, when you are preparing for this again and again, like you end up going back to your notes again and again, and you end up sometimes deleting certain points or adding some better points, some better examples or data. Online notes makes things very convenient then. Also, in DAF based questions, like you'll be asked a lot of questions in your mocks. So from there, sometimes you can get certain insights and then change your answers. Maybe you said an answer and they picked out some weak point and they asked related questions on that, and you realize, okay, this should not be added in my answer. So you go back to your notes, you delete, you update, and throughout the entire process, by the time your interview date comes, your notes will be very refined and you can revise them easily and you'll have very high quality answers. The second reason I want you to prepare online notes is because this is, at the end of the day, this is an unforgiving exam. 2,500 students approximately will give the interview. Out of that, around 1,000 will be selected in the final list. And from those 1,000, around 200 will be there who will get their desired services. So this means that potentially up to 2,300 students will be there who may have to write this exam again, who may have to give a UPSC CSE personality test in the future. And there at that stage, if you have these online notes already, you can use them. You won't have to waste time studying the DAF related portions again. So it saves your effort in future attempts also. So please use online notes. That would be my recommendation. Again, it's not a hard and fast rule. I know people who have used offline notes as well. It works. But the core thing here is prepare answers to every question using data and examples. Give high quality answers. That will make all the difference in your marks. Now, once you're done with the DAF related questions, the second type of questions is your current issues related question. How do you prepare current affairs for civil services interview stage? A lot of coaching institutes will conduct some online classes. You can watch these classes, you can attend these classes. One more benefit of attending these classes is you'll end up making a good peer group. And you may meet a lot of people from same home state or same hobbies, and that can also be beneficial here. Also, attending classes helps improve your conceptual understanding. Some of the teachers will be teaching are very good teachers, and they'll help you in your concepts as well. More than that, they'll help you how to approach current affairs for the interview stage. The current affairs for prelims, mains and interview stage, their approaches are very different. And sometimes it takes some time to get used to this new approach. So it always makes sense to attend these classes, at least get a feel of how to approach this entire thing, and then mold your strategy accordingly. So I'll recommend attending classes. They're available online as well as offline, but don't attend more than 1 or 2 institutes. Like any one institute is fine. Get done with that. But remember that classes in and of itself won't be very useful. You need to supplement that with a lot of efforts. So what do you do to supplement that? You read 2 newspapers. Till main stage, even if you haven't read newspapers, it is fine. It works. People can refer to compilations. But from here on, you need to read newspapers. And you may start with 1 newspaper, but it is recommended you read 2 newspapers. I personally recommend you to read Indian Express and Times of India. Because these are newspapers I found comparatively balanced, maybe not so critical of the administration. And in the interview also, you can't be too critical. You have to be well reasoned. You can provide criticisms, but they should be well reasoned, and the overall tone of your interview should not be too critical. The overall tone should be a bit positive, but with some criticisms also to show that you're not blindsided in any one direction. So overall positive with some criticism, and I found Indian Express to be perfect to capture that tone. Same with Times of India may I prefer because their coverage is huge. They end up having a lot more, let's say, news stories. And so your understanding improves. Okay. Beyond that, something I found very useful was in certain Telegram channels, they provided a PDF of all editorials combined from multiple newspapers, sometimes 10, 20 different newspapers. Just the editorial pages, they'll combine it in a PDF, and they provided that PDF. This is something that I did just for the last 3 weeks of my prep. Like my interview somewhere in mid-April, and so late March, early April, I started doing this thing, and it helped improve my confidence and understanding a lot more. What happens is, in a particular newspaper, one issue will be discussed from 1 or 2 sides. Across multiple editorials, one issue will be discussed from so many different dimensions that you start thinking about it in a very different way. So your entire thought process becomes much better, much more clarified when you read it from different perspectives. So just for that sake, and secondly also to help improve your confidence, that I have done this much, no one else has done itna. That improves your confidence to a great level. So for these two purposes, I did this and I found it to be a very useful exercise. Even a couple of current affairs questions asked in my interview, I could answer them well because of these multiple articles that I read. So this is a very time consuming and effort intensive thing. It took me around 2 hours a day. So this is not something I'd recommend you to do from the very beginning, or this is not something I'd recommend you to do necessarily. It's something if you have time, let's say your interview is towards a later date, you have that time, you are underconfident about your current affairs preparation, this is something I'd recommend you to do. There are other options for current affairs as well. A lot of compilations come, particularly for the interview stage. Like if you go for mocks, some coaching institutes will provide these magazines to you as well. You can refer to them as well. It will help give you a sense of completion that I've covered, let's say, 1 year's main issues. So I know what's there. Okay. At the same time, I'd always recommend reading newspapers or reading the editorials, because the board members will usually ask you questions based on what they have been reading recently. And something that's in the newspaper again and again will prove to be much more useful in preparing for those questions. So first option, always newspapers. Newspapers are absolutely compulsory here, at least one. And if you have time, 2 newspapers. Second option, that combined editorials PDF, which covers all newspapers, not just Hindu, Indian Express, Times of India, Hindustan Times, but also Mint, Financial Express, Business Standard, so on and so forth. And they give you varied perspectives. Don't have to read every editorial, but make sure that on every core issue which is in the news, read at least 7-8 articles, so that you will have a very good understanding of those issues from every dimension possible. And when it comes to note making, my personal belief is that note making is optional, because you don't need to retain a lot of information and you won't have time at the end to revise everything. So I ended up revising only my DAF related notes, but I did not refer or revise current affairs related notes, even what I had made earlier, because I didn't have time to do that. What I understood was, because I read newspapers religiously, continuously, towards the end, my understanding of current affairs had improved to a great level. And so that helped me answer questions confidently. And even in my actual interview, like some questions were asked, I had read about them maybe like 4 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago, but still I could answer decently within that room. So you don't necessarily have to make notes, but if you are comfortable, if you have time, if you feel that is better for your revision, then absolutely do make notes. Make either offline or online, whatever works for you. The third type of questions are situation-based questions. Again, certain DAF questionnaires from institutes, they will give you these questions. Practice at least 30-40. These are very similar to the case studies that we have in ethics, but they are smaller, like maybe 3-4 lines. And the more you practice them, the better your understanding improves. So I would recommend you to use ChatGPT extensively in these areas, because it helps you give a better structured approach to solving these case studies or situation-based questions. Second, what I would recommend is have some framework, so that even if you get a very new question in the interview hall, you can quickly think. One framework that I use is short term, I will do this, medium term, I will do this, and long term, I will do this. Another framework you can use is stakeholder-based framework. Basically, these are the same frameworks we use for our ethics case studies as well, but they are useful in this area also. Again, you don't need to devote a lot of time. Like, just practice a few questions until you gain that confidence, and based on how your mocks go, you can realign your strategy accordingly. For instance, if in your mocks you get the feedback that you're struggling with situation-based questions or application-based questions, then you need to practice it more. But if you're answering it well at that stage, that is good enough. So these were the 3 types of questions that you have to prepare for: DAF-based questions, current affairs, and situation-based questions. But there are a lot of other things that also help and aid us in our preparations. For instance, a lot of coaching institutes will start giving you free guidance, free mocks. Once you reach the interview stage, coaching institutes want to be associated with you. And so everything they will give you for free. And you need to know how to make the best utilization of that. So a few things that coaching institutes offer that I found to be useful. One is for DAF preparation, the individual sessions with mentors that I talked about. It helped me figure out what to write, what not to write. Second was current affairs based classes, again what I talked about. Third and fourth were mocks. There are one-on-one mocks and panel-based mocks as well. Both of them are useful. One-on-one was more informal for me, but they helped boost my confidence a bit, helped me prepare my DAF really thoroughly. In panel mocks, again, this is the most important thing in this entire process. The more you practice, the more confidence you have, the more you can improve. So panel mocks are absolutely necessary. Don't do too much of them. Don't do too few. Which mocks to use, which coachings to go to. Again, you'll end up joining a lot of Telegram groups right after your results. So there a lot of these discussions will happen. You can figure out from there. You can figure out from based on your peer groups, the friends that you have. And at the end of the day, like the quality offered is almost the same everywhere. So wherever you go, you will be satisfied. You will get the best that is possible, and don't worry about that. Just give your best. Now, again, the fifth is a DAF-based questionnaire that I talked about, which I found to be one of the most useful things in my preparation. In addition to this, they also give you a lot of material. It might be material related to your home state or your hobbies, material related to current affairs. Some institutes even conduct classes for your home state, or let's say for an academic background. You can refer to those as well. It depends on how much time you have. But these are the core things that I found very useful. Finally, again, as I said, out of 2,500 who are giving the interview or the personality test, about 2,300 potentially would be in a situation where they have to write again. So even after your interview stage, sometimes you may get selected, sometimes you may not get selected. The probability is higher that you don't get selected based on just pure numbers. Like some of you would have performed much better in mains, you might be more confident, but you have to be prepared for what may come. And a lot of coaching institutes also give you free test series, let's say, or some coupons, discounts, access to current affairs classes, which are useful in further attempts for prelims or mains. Okay, again, these are stuff you can utilize, and the peer groups helps in this. The seniors will tell you which institute is giving what, and you can apply accordingly. So, coaching institutes, again, everything is free. Technically, they are associating with you for the potential of using your name and photograph. So again, join based on your comfort level as well. Personally, like I gave only 4 panel mocks because I did not want to extend myself further, and I did not go and join every institute possible. I was very selective in which institutes I joined based on what I felt was useful for me, or the reputation of the institute mattered, so on and so forth. So take your call, but utilize the resources that you are giving very effectively, because all of these are very useful stuff which will help you score better. Now the personality test stage is somewhere where I found peer group to be most useful. Now peer groups, one, you can have DAF based groups. Let's say groups formed on the basis of your home state, your hobbies, your optionals. There people might share relevant resources, questions, so on and so forth. And these are very useful. You may end up making good friends from there. You may end up having peer mocks discussions there. Peer groups are very useful during the interview stage, either offline or online, whatever is convenient for you. For me, my peer group was mostly online because I was preparing from home. Similarly, another way peer group helps is in having peer mocks or discussions. So I had a few friends with one person I might discuss daily newspapers. We'll ask each other questions and see how the other responds. With another friend, I was discussing, let's say, IR related questions, so on and so forth. So I had a few friends like this, few friends from, let's say, my own optional, my own home state, with whom I'm discussing. Or if I have a doubt, I'll ask them, how would you answer this particular question? So on and so forth. Peer group I found to be very useful. So build your peer group accordingly, and they're useful post your interview stage as well. They're useful for prelims preparation, for mains preparation, and so on and so forth. So this is a good stage to build a good peer group. We'll end here. Before we end, again, I talked in the very beginning that you may end up scoring very well, you may end up scoring bad, but your score depends on a lot of factors outside your control. Like, for instance, the board that you get may be a board which is not known for giving high marks. It may be a board which asks random questions, current-based questions, and not questions from your DAF. You may have a afternoon session. You may be the last person to enter where the board is tired. You may have a morning session. Your date might come the very first week of the interview. Your date might come in the very last week of the entire process. There are a lot of factors which are outside our control, which have some role or the other to play how much marks we can get. So we can never guarantee for sure that we will score well or we will be bad. But at the same time, this does not mean that everything is outside our control. There are things we can control. There are things we can build upon. And the way I visualize it is in this way. So there is a particular level to which, let's say, which is our average level. And based on your particular, let's say, luck or randomness or factors outside your control, your actual performance may lie in this range. This might be the variance. This is the mean, this is the variance. And let's say you have a bad day. Your level might be better than someone else, but still you may end up scoring lower. The other person whose preparation was not as good as you, whose, let's say, answers were not in general as good as you, they ended up having a very good day. They got a good board. Their score might lie somewhere here. And so you'll notice this thing that when results came, someone you were expecting to score very low ended up scoring quite high. Someone you were expecting to score much higher ended up getting lower marks. You will end up seeing this variation. And you may end up seeing only this part, that one person who was expected to score less scored much higher than someone else. But you have to see that entire picture. There are certain levels to which we can raise. Like, you cannot eliminate luck, but you can do your preparation so thoroughly that you minimize the role of luck. So that even if you perform, even if you have a poor day that day, you still end up scoring above average marks. So your focus during the coming few weeks or months, like till whenever your interview date is, your focus should be on how do I maximize my efforts and how do I maximize my potential or my mean level or my average level, and how do you raise the bar from here to here. And for that, I again talked, you have to remember the core is they're testing your mental caliber, they're testing your fit within the system. So you have to work on high quality answers, especially from your DAF. You have to show you have general awareness, so you're aware of your current affairs. You have to show how structured your thinking is by answering your situation-based questions well. And above all, during that entire interview, you have to be polite, you have to be respectful, you have to be humble, you have to address them in such a manner that they are not offended. You have to receive criticisms well, so on and so forth. These are the factors that are in your control. I wish you all the best, and I hope you end up having a great time. Personally, for me, in my entire journey of 5 years, the interview stage was the most enjoyable stage because it, on some level, it also helped me enhance and develop my personality a little bit as well. It connected with me with a lot of new friends, and I look at that phase and I'll have fond memories. I wish the same for you, and I hope you go on to be successful in this exam. Thank you.